Do you hear me?
We can hear you, Eitvydas.
Hello.
Oh, good. Got
Hello.
Justina. Got Ambassador Gilchrist. Okay. I think James is ambassador. The other ambassador is going to join us a little later, but we'll start off right now. I'd like to introduce the panel. I'm the moderator. I'm Kęstutis Eidukonis, Lieutenant Colonel, retired. Also the temporary head of Blue Yellow USA. We're providing support for Ukraine in the way of non-threatening, non-lethal stuff. Some of them are drones. They might be lethal. So, but anyway, that's where we're coming from. Let me introduce our panel. We've got a very distinguished panel. I know it's a hard act to follow, Mr. Gilchrist, but we do have a really qualified panel for this discussion. I'm so honored and so pleased to see everybody here. Let me introduce Justina. Justina Budginaitė-Foehly. Got that right, did I? The Foehly is the part that threw me, German, right? Okay. She's a non-resident senior fellow in the Atlantic Council's Europe Center and Transatlantic Security Initiative within the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. She's also worked in the Lithuanian Ministry of Defense, did a lot of important work there, also worked with the German government, and she's an all-around star in Lithuania and Germany, and now she's going to be a star here in the United States. So welcome, Justina. So glad to see you.
Thank you so much.
Our next is another ambassador. We got Robert Gilchrist, ambassador to Lithuania, of all things, and he was appointed by the Trump administration back when. I'm sure he could tell us a lot of good, interesting stories about what goes on in Lithuania and what goes on in the U.S. government. He served as the ambassador in Lithuania from February 2020 to August 2023, kind of during the COVID crisis, what the world was going through. He's a career foreign service officer with the rank of Minister Counsel, appointed by President Donald Trump and confirmed by the United States Senate. Bachelor of Arts from Wake Forest University, Master of Arts from the University of Virginia. He's been the director of the United States Department of State Operations Center, Deputy Chief of Mission for the United States Embassy in Sweden, Deputy Chief of Mission of the United States Embassy Estonia, and the Director of Nordic and Baltic Affairs and State Department Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs. Really a very interesting career, and very pleased and thankful and honored to have you here for this presentation. We also have now Eitvydas Bajarūnas. Just saw you not too long ago on TV with somebody named Orajus, if you remember that presentation. Really interesting to see that just a week or two ago. Ambassador Eitvydas Bajarūnas is a visiting fellow at the Center of European Policy Analysis, CEPA. Eitvydas has various overseas postings, including ambassador to the UK, Russia, and Sweden. Non-resident ambassador to Portugal, Oman, and Uzbekistan, Consul General in St. Petersburg, Russia, and Deputy Ambassador of Mission of Lithuania to NATO in Brussels. Served as the political director of the MFA, Ambassador at Large for Hybrid Threats, and director of several units within MFA and Ministry of Defense. Additionally, he was the diplomatic advisor to the President of Lithuania, and a consultant for NATO affairs, commissioned in the Seimas and Parliament of Lithuania. We've got a long list here. If I read the whole thing, it would take me half an hour. Like the rest of our guests, it's going to have to cut it a little short. Do have also Ambassador James Gilmore, who's going to join us later. He was ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And Mr. Gilmore is the District of Richmond, Virginia. He was also the governor of Virginia for quite a while. So he's also very well qualified, served in the military, all kinds of, I've got 2 pages of all his accomplishments. Can't read them all here today. So we need to get started with our little presentation, and decided, Justina, we're going to start with you. You got 5 to 7 minutes here, and give us your shot.
Okay, thank you so much for having me in this conference. So, as we know, the Baltic states have faced a lot in recent decades, and especially since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They have dealt with Russia's energy blackmail and supply cutoffs, cyber and arson attacks, orchestrated migrant crisis, and systematic propaganda. Despite all these challenges at home, the Baltic states stood firmly with Ukraine, because that's where security of the Baltic states starts today. And today, as they are strengthening their defenses, the Baltic states are leading by example in many ways. And many important achievements have been made at national, regional, and NATO levels. And there is still, I think, much to gain from these challenging times to seize the moment and emerge even stronger than before from these crises we have today. So I wanted to highlight 4 key areas of Baltic defense planning, while at the same time showing that the strategic reach of these developments is far beyond Baltic borders, actually. So to start with, knowing their complicated geography and learning from Ukraine's experience, the Baltic states understand the hard truth. They do not have the strategic depth and thus the luxury to organize their defenses after the adversary's potential initial incursion. Ukraine's experience also proves how difficult it is to retake occupied territories. That's why number 1 on my list is forward defense starts at the very first inch. And that's why the Baltic states know very well not only the Article 5 of Washington Treaty, but also the Article 3, which says that strengthening individual defenses is crucial. And that's what the Baltic states are doing. They are modernizing their armed forces, investing heavily in military procurement, and doing that to a large part with the US. We just had the news that Estonia received their first HIMARS systems. Lithuania and Latvia are to follow with HIMARS systems from the US. The Baltic states are also increasing their defense spending to record levels, aiming for 5 to 6% of GDP in the coming years. They are making significant investments in order to close the security gaps in air defense and in deep strike capabilities. That's where the HIMARS come in. They also invest a lot in infrastructure to support allied deployments. And the allied presence in the Baltic states is, of course, crucial. So NATO's regional defense plans, they ensure a forward and integrated posture. The United Kingdom leads the enhanced forward presence battalion in Estonia. Canada does so in Latvia, Germany in Lithuania. And Germany goes even further, as it's committed to permanently station a full brigade of around 5,000 troops in Lithuania. And this marks the first such deployment since the Cold War. The transition from rotational to permanent presence is already underway, with full capacity expected by 2027. And there is, of course, US rotational forces in Lithuania and Estonia, and they serve as a crucial deterrent against Russia. Meanwhile, number 2 on my list is that strengthening Baltic borders is vital. The region's geography makes border defense essential. The Baltic states share frontiers with Russia and Belarus, the latter now fully integrated in Moscow's military strategy. So to address this, the Baltic states are building the Baltic Defense Line, a network of physical barriers and obstacles designed to slow down a potential invasion. And the key here is, of course, regional integration. The goal is to connect this Baltic Defense Line with Poland's Eastern Shield, and this is supported now by the EU, and shows that the goal for interoperability in Europe in the military area is taking shape. In a further step, as it has been mentioned, the Baltic states, Poland and Finland have decided to withdraw from the Ottawa Convention banning anti-personnel landmines. Russia never signed to this convention, and it has used landmines extensively in Ukraine. So this shift is born of necessity and complete understanding that current reality doesn't allow the Baltics to live under peacetime assumptions anymore. Number 3 is civil preparedness and whole of society defense. So Baltic defense is about armed and non-armed resistance, and all 3 countries follow the total defense model rooted in societal resilience. And unlike many European countries that still solely rely on professional armies, the Baltic states maintain or have reinstated conscription. Military training is being expanded, and citizens too are learning not to just fight, but also to support by protecting infrastructure, managing logistics, and providing key services under the conditions of war. So the aim is clear that in a crisis, everyone has to know their role. And this model draws heavily on Finland's and Sweden's traditions, and it is already gaining attention also across the EU as a way to build societal strength in a volatile era. And number 4 on my list is defense industrial developments, but also defense innovation and how vital it is at the moment. So the war in Ukraine has changed how war is fought. Innovation has exploded, from drones to counter drones to electronic warfare to battlefield logistics. And the Baltic states are actively also a part of this wave. By supplying Ukraine, they gain insight and feedback. Their projects are tested on the battlefield, and their developers learn directly from Ukrainian partners. And the Baltic region, we should remember that it leads globally already now in cybersecurity and digital services. So now those strengths are converging with defense, and there's a huge potential in drone and anti-drone systems, in undersea sensor networks, in cyber defense platforms. Also, Lithuania is heavily investing in attracting investments in its defense industry, and there is this partnership with Rheinmetall, which is to build a huge NATO standard ammunition factory in Lithuania, and to start this production in late 2026. I think it is still the goal that has to be reached. So the Baltic states are not waiting for security to be guaranteed. They are shaping it themselves, and faced with complex threats, they have chosen the path of action to defend from the first inch, to invest boldly, to integrate regionally, and to prepare society as a whole. So I would stop here, and then I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Let's hold the questions till after everybody does their presentations. I think it'll be a little more interesting that way. Next, I'd like to ask Ambassador Gilchrist to present his views on our major topic here today.
Well, thanks so much for including me on this panel. Eitvydas and I have known each other for, I think, 10 years at this point, from years ago when we were both in Sweden together. So it's great to see him again here. I should also start by saying that I retired last year from the U.S. government, and I left Lithuania now almost 2 years ago. So I'm not in a position really to articulate current U.S. policy with regard to this administration. But certainly nearly a third of my career, over a third actually, was spent working in the Baltic region. So it's one I understand quite well and continue to follow closely. What I'd like to do is just go over a lot of the basic themes, I think some of which have been touched on, but I think in many ways indicate the leadership that the Baltic countries have shown with regard to security, but also many of the challenges. First of all, again, I'd like to note the fundamental importance of the 3 Baltic countries in committing or setting a goal of 5% of GDP towards defense. This is important, first of all, for their own security, Secondly, it sends a strong message to the United States and other NATO partners that the Baltic countries are serious and are demonstrating leadership. And I know that all three Baltic countries have been leaders in pressing other European governments to increase defense expenditures. I think a lot of this, it's important that the increased expenditures going not just towards troop readiness in the three Baltic states, but also towards infrastructure that make all three Baltic countries more secure, but also make it a more attractive destination for training and for troop presence from other NATO allies, including the United States. I think we all wish that the wake-up call for defense spending had come much earlier. I think 2014 was a watershed moment. And I know that many European countries, including those we're talking about today, had even gone below 1% for defense expenditure. And so I think as hindsight is 2020 vision, I think we all recognize now that letting our collective guard down was a big mistake. But I know that others are stepping up now, and I think that remains fundamentally important. The United States cannot care more about European security than Europeans do. This is something that I always said, and I think it continues to be something that our allies, including the Baltic countries, need to remember as well. And NATO remains fundamentally an important component of U.S. security policy and of our role as a leading democracy in the world, and it will remain that way. I'd like to point out some other areas in which the Baltic states are truly leading. One is cybersecurity, obviously. 2007, the Bronze Soldier riots were a watershed moment on that. Estonia stepped up, and I know that the NATO Center for Excellence in Cybersecurity is really a model for all of the centers of excellence in Europe, and has become a focal point with regard to cyber policy within NATO. Lithuania has also set up the Regional Cyber Defense Center, and all three Baltic countries have greatly enhanced their capabilities with regard to cybersecurity. Moving on, I'd like to point out energy security. And just recently, I think we all welcome the news that finally desynchronization was complete, that the three Baltic countries no longer are on the old Soviet power grid, which obviously greatly reduces Russia's ability to use energy, use access to electricity as a potential lever. In addition, all three have increased their use of LNG as a source of power, including American LNG. And I think this points to, if you're looking at the transatlantic relationship in transactional terms, this is an area in which both the United States and our Baltic allies benefit in a very tangible way. Turning on, I think we have to look at the issue of migration, and we can see how forced migration across the border has been used to sow chaos, or potentially sow chaos, or cause challenges for all three Baltic states from Belarus and from Russia. I think what's notable is that all three countries have successfully curbed that migration, curbed that challenge, and in many ways built a wall. We talk about a wall here in the United States. Well, I know that the three Baltic countries have also greatly strengthened their borders and have built walls in that way. I'll digress a moment to a tangential issue, but nonetheless, I think it impacts security as well. I mean, as we talk about migration, there's also the issue of demographics in the three Baltic countries and population decline, which is a serious issue. And over the long term, I think it's perhaps a bigger challenge than the issues we've actually discussed. There'll be challenges with ensuring that there are enough citizens to serve in the armed forces, to keep the nascent defense industries sustainable and ensure that Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia can draw on expertise, but also to ensure that economies remain dynamic. And these are issues I know that all three countries are wrestling with, but I don't know if simply relying on trying to bring back the diaspora or encouraging family-friendly policies is going to be enough to bridge that gap. But I simply present that as one of the larger security challenges out there. I'll move on quickly to the issue of information and disinformation. All three Baltic states really are leaders in this regard in different ways, both through civil society or societies more generally that understand what disinformation looks like. And I think in many ways are more attuned to it than many of my fellow Americans. But this will remain a challenge. Not just the disinformation that's fed out more broadly in social media, and we see it, we know what it is, but also I think the information that's fed to minority groups in all three Baltic countries, some of which remain in some ways inside the Russian information space. You can block particular broadcasters, but there's so many ways to go around it, and it's not just access to specific news, but to a whole ethos. A Russian soap opera says a lot about Russian society, and it also draws in folks with a certain set of values that I think are in contrast to values that we associate with the West. So it's something that we have to remain attuned to. I think with regard to ethnic minorities as well, I think there has to be continued focus on the issue of integration in various sorts of ways. It's not just a matter of language, but also a matter of ensuring that national minorities have a vested interest in the democracies in each of the three Baltic states. And I know that remains a challenge with Russian disinformation. And I know that there are many minorities, Russian minorities or Poles or others in Lithuania, who have a strong interest in national politics. But I still think that that's an area that's out there and it's a potential underbelly. I'll close by saying I think that the three Baltic countries are most effective when they're working together in concert. It can be a challenge for a small country of 1.3 million or 1.8 million or 2.7 million to approach Washington individually. But when the three work together, I think that their voice is much more powerful. It's important in terms of coordination, not just for the security of the three countries, which has to happen, but in terms of presenting as much as possible a unified voice in the United States. And I'll close basically by calling on all in the diaspora or everyone to, you all are ambassadors in the United States and elsewhere for the Baltic countries and explaining who and where they are. And I know that there are many Europeans that struggle to find Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania on a map, not just Americans, but there's a compelling history in support of democracy and a compelling story with regard to the commitment of the three Baltic countries to their own defense, collective defense. And I think that story has to continue to be told, not just in Washington, but throughout the United States. So with that, I will conclude my brief comments.
Thank you, Ambassador. It was a pleasure hearing you. We have now joined us Ambassador James Gilmore. Do you have to rush off again, or?
Oh, sir, I'm back.
Okay, you're back for good. All right, we're going to save you for last, best for last, or whatever, as they say. I'd like to have Ambassador Eitvydas Bajarūnas from Lithuania talk next. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much, the panel. Thanks very much, Kęstutis, and thanks very much, organizers, for inviting me. I was so much thrilled of listening to the last presentation of Ambassador Bob Gilchrist that nearly forgot what I wanted to say. No, this is the joke. I still remember, but I think he covered so well all other aspects which complemented the first presentation of our panel of Justina, who was more on the defense. So I would that makes me now to a bit of adapt what I wanted to say and to start from a bit of more bigger issues. Of course, since I'm still Lithuanian ambassador now on the sabbatical, it's CEPA DC. So of course I have this pleasure to speaking a bit more free. So I would be can be even a bit more controversial, try to provoke some discussion. So of course, no doubts that one of the biggest security challenges. I will come up to Russia, but for Lithuania's political masters, for our leaders, this is what's happening in Washington. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, we were so much pro-American countries. We still are, and this example of the death of the 4 American soldiers in Lithuania, and the way how Lithuania treated them, this emotional wave which followed the ceremony of the farewell with the bodies of the soldiers, have brought me again this understanding that this Lithuania, but also Baltic support and sympathy towards Americans towards America, towards US is great. But of course, what's happening in US and this transactional US new administration policy, US voting with quite a non-traditional countries, I would say, I put this diplomatically, in UN on Ukraine-related resolutions. The way as many Baltics interpret that America was more pushing towards Ukraine rather than on Putin brought, and of course the signals coming on possible America's withdrawal or shrinking of the forces in Europe, and in generally U.S. commitment towards Europe, which despite the many strong statements coming, but this atmosphere creates the very uneasy policy for the Baltics. As I said, we were and we are strong pro-Americans. For many Lithuanians, understanding of our defense is not inseparable from the United States. If we would think Lithuania is alone, so this is the way. So this aloneness definitely would be best expressed by Americans leaving Lithuania. So no American boots on the ground. That's why for Lithuania's leadership, as I said, this is really tricky and a sensitive period, and that's why we need you, Baltic Americans, to ease this our sort of political. Not, I would not say tension, but more uneasy way to cope with this current realities, and to bridge the gaps. So of course, so far, Baltic reaction to the developments in Washington was very calm and very practically based and practically orientated, and very sort of step by step practical elements driven. So Lithuania, contrary to even some policy logic, started to increase interest on to acquire more American gadgets, and that's why one of the first visits of the newly appointed Minister of Defense of Lithuania, Šakalienė, was exactly to Washington to meet with the American defense companies to attract them to Lithuania. Of course, Lithuania in all European debates is also showing the example that calmness, that we need to think of a more stronger Europe. We need to have more defense money into European market. We need increase European defense productions. But that's what, as we interpret, should go in parallel in still attracting American interest into Europe. So we will be probably last to, as what we say, this to switch off the light of NATO when American will leave. Probably not, but that is again to explain that this Baltic calmness and rational approach, increasing European defense, but also to continue to attract America, was, I think, and still is was our key policy. And of course we have very strong arguments, because not only we need American on Lithuanian soil, we need America in Europe, but Baltics Lithuanians have shown throughout this our postmodern history of regaining independence that we were always very loyal to America. We were together with America in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in post Yugoslavia operations, and in generally we were always very strongly supporting American stance, and that's why this is not like a one-sided sort of one-sided relations. So I leave this part of Baltic and U.S. interest. Then, of course, goes European approach on our security. Again, being a pro-American country, traditionally Lithuania's approach, as far as I remember myself being in diplomacy for decades, in any European discussions, for example, in whatever new spin of the French colleagues coming with a yet another proposal on the Grand European Army, Lithuania's approach was, hold on, we have NATO. Of course, we should, as a Europeans, should contribute, but not at the detriment to NATO. So I think now there is a bit of way to rethink. We need also to consider, unfortunately, but this is a reality, that we will be left alone. And this is where there is a need for Lithuanians and the Baltics, while continue to be strong supporters of NATO, to jump into a more stronger support of European defense, not again to create parallel armies or parallel structures. That is not the way to answer, to create more European capabilities. And this is, I think, would be also in interest of America to see Europe not in disarray, but Europe is investing into more on defense. Of course, this even symbolically for Lithuanians, it's that the first ever European Commissioner on Defense and Cosmos is Lithuanian and former twice Prime Minister of Lithuania, Andrius Kubilius. So he recently came with this white paper on European defense. European Union also agreed on quite a substantial amount, 100 billion euros for European defense projects, and in total 800 billion package for European defense spending. So this is a very substantial increase or shift of European defense thinking. 5 years ago, even after the war already started in Ukraine, in Crimea or Crimean annexation, there were very few voices in Europe to agree that we need strong European defense investment. Now everyone goes without saying, this is not for tomorrow, this is for today, actually for yesterday. We need European defense. We need strong European capabilities to deliver in the case of the need. And then, of course, goes regional approach.
Ambassador,
this is my
can
last.
we wrap it up? We still have another.
Yes, my last. Of course, we are part of EU, part of NATO, and we are very strong and by all opinion polls. But the regional approach, especially with the Finland and Sweden joining NATO, is contribute to this understanding that we should pull together forces of the region, and that's why various initiatives like Nordic Baltic 8 and JEF, Joint Expeditionary Forces, where the UK, Netherlands is joined by 8 Nordic countries in various defense supported initiatives. So these all initiatives goes along the line that we need to have more now investing into defense and more supporting. And then, of course, I leave this topic of the hybrid threats, which I was initially opted to speak for Q&A, but if in case of the interest. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have Ambassador Gilmore needs to say a few words here. I noticed that he was also in the military. He worked as a counterintelligence agent in West Germany. And thank you for your service in the military, governor, ambassador, military, really impressive. And, can we keep it short? I think pretty much everybody covered a lot of territory here. We want to open it up to questions and answers from the audience. And I think that would be a good litmus test there. But go ahead, Ambassador.
Very good. As people have said, everything has now been said, but not everybody has said it. So it's my turn, I guess, to
There you go.
to do some of this. Okay, I'll try to keep it short for you. I'll try to keep my remarks down to about an hour. Listen, first things first. I don't speak for the Trump administration. Let me be clear about that. I offer what advice I can through organizations like this and through media appearances like I just made. But I don't speak for the Trump administration. I'm an observer of what he's doing, of course, and an advocate. I'm also not a military professional. And I think you have some people like that who have been participating, and I think that's very helpful. But where I can contribute is as a politician. I've been a politician my entire life, and I can look at some of these geopolitical things as a politician, and I think make some useful decisions. As you said, I was United States ambassador to the OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, in Vienna, Austria. There, I had an opportunity to interact with 56 other ambassadors from 56 other countries in that organization. And I did interact with them. And every week, of course, I met with the Quad, the British, the French, the Germans, and the Americans. I met with the Ukrainians every week. I had an opportunity to interact with the European Union and a lot of these other things so that I understand what I think the geopolitics is. And in addition to that, I was a soldier, as you point out, during the Cold War. I lived in a time in which Europe was divided and was on edge. It was a hostile, tense situation. And I don't ever want to see us go back to that. And I have had one trip since I left from Vienna to Vilnius. So I've been around and I've had a chance to watch some of these things, and it's helped me develop certain ideas. And I think the fundamental questions are, look, what kind of world do we want to live in the 21st century? That's the bottom line that should be driving our political decisions. Because Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea have decided that they don't like the world the way that it's set up. With its leadership by the United States and others, and its bulwark by NATO, they just don't like it. And they want to change it to a more authoritarian century. So the question we all have in the West is, what kind of world do we want to live in? And what sacrifices are we prepared to make to come to grips with this? How important is Europe to the United States of America? Based on my experience and based on my reading of history, I think Europe is essential to the safety and survival of the United States. So that takes you more to this issue of the Baltics and these other areas as well. I might point out that all since World War II and the Cold War, our strategy has been one of deterrence, to be prepared militarily so that we deter the Russians and our other adversaries from doing the wrong things. And that's what NATO serves to do. But deterrence has failed. And that is a profound statement, because that means that it's now wide open as to what we're actually going to do. Putin actually has pulled the trigger and done an invasion in the furtherance of his goals. And if he succeeds in Ukraine and he's able to conquer that country, or even to reduce it just to vassalship, if you will, I feel sure that Moldova falls immediately. They already have Russian troops in that country in something that they like to call Transnistria. And then immediately the next stop would be the Baltics, because Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia are right there on their periphery. If they think they have a right to go and take the independent country of Ukraine and the independent country of Moldova, they certainly will think that they have the right to take the independent countries on the Baltics. I guess my point is that if Ukraine fails and the Baltics are attacked, the danger there is the destruction of NATO, which is Putin's goal. NATO is the principal bulwark that stops Russians from reassembling their old empire and compromising Europe generally. So the threat to the Baltics, we know what will happen. They'll do the same game plan they did in Crimea and in eastern Ukraine. They'll have little green men in there who basically will represent they've got to be there in order to secure the safety of the Russian-speaking ethnic people in the Baltics. Personally, I don't get it. I would think that the Russian ethnic people would like being in the Baltics and not being back in that authoritarian dictatorship in Russia. But there'll be an excuse. There'll be an excuse to put little green men in and test NATO's resolve. And if NATO doesn't do anything, then they'll go ahead and send their troops in the way that they did in eastern Ukraine. This is the threat. But the United States has been over time resolute about this. President Obama said in September of 14 that we would defend every inch of NATO territory, which of course includes the Baltics. But if the Baltics go down as NATO members, that shatters NATO and it opens the door to the intimidation of Europe. When I went to Lithuania back in March of 24 and met with some people there under the auspices of a Heritage Foundation trip, the Lithuanian leadership there made it clear to me what their thought was. And they said, it's not if the Russians are coming, it's when they're coming. And so they know what they have to do. My advice is this. Vladimir Putin thought when he invaded Ukraine that he was going to have a cheap and easy win. That's why he was directing all those soldiers and those vehicles towards Kyiv. And it didn't work out that way, did it? Now, you still have people like Medvedev saying crazy, stupid things. He says them almost every day. But there's also Russian leadership that has said that they have a right to traditional Russian lands. I can't think of anything more dangerous than that attitude, than that policy position of Putin and his fellow war criminals around him. If they have a right to Ukraine as a former Russian land, they certainly have a right to the 3 Baltic countries as a former Russian land in their point of view. So the danger is just very specific there. In a larger sense, I think that that Ukraine, the European conflict, and eventually the threat to the Baltics is part of a worldwide conflict that we're already in. You already have the Chinese, the Iranians, and the North Koreans and working with the Russians. You already have North Korean troops, for God's sakes, in Europe fighting in Ukraine. So the worldwide conflict is underway. But there's still plenty of tools that we have to work with. President Trump has said that he wants to begin to harness American natural resources of oil to reduce the price of oil, which will break the Russian efforts. It will break their economy. There's plenty of sanctions. There's banking sanctions to secure the American dollar power. There are secondary sanctions we can have on people who would buy oil from Russia. And then finally, there's the minerals deal. And you know what? I think the minerals deal is great because it's an agreement between 2 sovereign countries, the United States and Ukraine, which means that Ukraine is not just some former Russian land. It's an independent country like I was dealing with at OSCE, the same way that the Balkan countries are. So there's plenty of activity going on right now. We should not be too shaky about this. The National Defense Authorization Act of 2020 in America required the Secretary of Defense and State to conduct a comprehensive evaluation on the protection of the Baltic countries. The National Defense Authorization Act of 2022 put some money in for Baltic defenses. The Foreign Affairs Committees of the Baltic States and Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, and France and the United Kingdom have met just in the past few weeks. And they have asserted that there should be no compromise in Ukraine of territory. Well, that's really important because if you give up territory in Ukraine as part of some kind of ceasefire peace deal, well, then you're just opening the door to giving up territory in the so-called traditional Russian territories in the criminal point of view of the Russians. So I've tried to give you my thoughts about the geopolitical consequences of all this. I hope I didn't go too long. I look forward to answering any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you, Ambassador. Great update there, and a lot of good points brought up. I'd like to open up, if we have time, to questions for any of the panel members from the audience.
Okay. Yeah, forgive the feedback from me.
We're getting a lot of feedback. Okay, better. Do we have any questions? While we're waiting for some questions, I'd like to thank all our guests for their presentations. Some really informative stuff there, and appreciate it. Kind of like to point out too that the economy of Europe needs to improve also, so they can fund. So we need to some good news real quickly to open up an alliance with the European Union and other countries as far as trade and defense. Lithuania's economy could use a big shot in the arm. I'm very familiar with what goes on there, and you need a strong economy to have a strong defense, and the same goes for the United States. So, any questions from the audience? Conrad?
Yeah, hold on. We're having some issues over here.
I intend to go back and if it's recorded and listen to Justina. I missed that part, but I'm quite anxious to hear that.
Yeah. Yep. 1 second.
Yeah, I think we got some issues, but yeah, we'll overcome them. I'd like to take that time to say a few things myself. I appreciate what everybody said here. And like I said, it's if Ukraine wins, we don't have to worry about defending the Baltics. And the important thing is giving Ukraine enough to win. 80% of what they need comes from the United States. But they can't get all of it. Air defense systems and stuff like that are definitely stuff we need from the United States for those countries for Ukraine and for the Baltics to defend themselves quite literally. HIMARS are wonderful weapons. The Ukrainians love the hell out of the Bradleys. We got thousands of them sitting in storage right now, not being used. Paying for that, and thousands of them sitting. We could do a lot of stuff there. Conrad, are you ready there?
Yeah, I'm here. I think we're gonna wrap it up. And thank you all for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Gentlemen and ladies, and people in the audience. We're going to probably rebroadcast this on YouTube tonight, and your people that spread it around so that people can hear what you had to say. You had some very important messages to get out to Lithuania and Europe and the United States. So really thank you guys. It's been an honor to moderate you. And I did a lousy job because I let everybody talk too much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Bye-bye.